Right.
Oh, let's not come down hard on on the NRA or anybody making these kids afraid about that.
Right.
But creepy clowns. Oh yeah, got to send the cops out and get them to arrest people for creepy clowns.
Indeed.
And of course, we will be speaking about creepy clowns in today's show because these are the issues that we are attending to today, and they are British Petroleum CEO Bob Dudley. The guy he took over who wanted his life back. Bob Dudley took over for that guy. Well, he says the company's a little bit saddened by the Deepwater Horizon movie.
Huh?
Yeah, well, 11 guys got incinerated, and you got, and let alone the devastation caused to a whole ecosystem and a society. Oh, yeah, a little bit saddened. Weep. Black-owned and operated Portland, Oregon cupcake. I don't know why it's hard for me to say cupcake. Cupcake shop is accused of racism against blacks by, you guessed it, white liberal skulls. It's always great when white people want to lecture other people about, disenfranchisement. We'll see about what that story is all about. And, like I said, as the creepy clown franchise, and you know what? I'm putting a trademark on that from now on. It's got to be trademarked because it's a franchise. Well, as that moves overseas, malevolent mimes have been frightening French school children since before the storming of the Bastille. That's right. These things don't come out of a vacuum, Wink.
Right.
I'm just saying. Hey, it's Tuesday, and it's not only Red Sky at Morning Tuesday, because there could be a red sky in your morning, so take warning. But it also means that we get to visit with Chris Reeves, also known affectionately still as Tom Servo 433. And we shouldn't make light of it too much. I mean, the monikers that we carried before we have to go by real names.
Yeah.
Doesn't lessen the importance of what Chris has been doing. Now, he's a hard worker, and he's all about getting out the vote, but also finding more and better Democrats to run for office.
Yes. Yeah.
But today we're going to be speaking on the Kansas predatory lender scandal that has, snared up a few Republicans out there. Yeah. Now, it may be that it's just more of Republicans doing this, so they have more of an opportunity to, game the system and blame, people of color for all the ills of society.
Right.
Could be. We're also going to speak about vile sexist men or a growth industry in the Kansas and Missouri GOP. That's right. Trump-like men get elected to the GOP. See, this is what I'm saying, Wink. This is where all the money is.
Right.
What the hell are we doing, trying to espouse equality and civility?
Right. Yeah, we should be on the other side there.
We would, we're rich in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be buco rich and be able to, get away with the most vile things that we can't even think of.
Exactly.
Believable. And there was also a debate in Kansas over whether God sent Trump like the harlots or is the incubus. And what is the incubus? Well, you'll find out. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Coast community calendar and more on the after show. With that ever so fine fellow over there on the east coastal parts of the U.S. and with his east coastal elitism, as they like to say in the right-wing think tanks. And his name is Wink. And, yeah. And this guy all the way back over here on the West Coast, unabashed elitism. We wouldn't have had the Enlightenment without the elites.
Heck yeah.
Come on. And my name is Justice. And we do this 5 days a week for about an hour-ish because we love you, baby. All right. Yeah, I'm not so into, I did it my way to Who Loves You, Baby.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, some people have a mission statement, and some people, I don't know. Prime directive.
There you go.
How's the is your transportation department in the county getting ready for winterizing? Did you guys do anything for potential storms from the hurricanes and stuff?
No, not for the hurricane because it never reaches this far north.
But I mean, there has been instances where there's been anomalies off of the Atlantic and the eastern upper
Oh yeah,
sea
absolutely.
that have been
Yeah,
pushed up, and then you got like massive snow from Canada.
yeah. Oh,
Because of the
definitely.
way it convects.
Yep.
But
Yeah, it
but
does.
are
We get
are,
that.
are you guys taking precautions yet for winter, or
Yeah, oh yeah, they're set up, they're ready to go. I mean, they've been doing this for 100 years up here, so they're professionals at it. So yeah,
Well, here's a question: do you guys have to pass bond measures to get that paid for? How does that work?
Taxes, that's all.
Okay,
Yeah,
and people are willing to
Oh, hell
allow
yeah.
a penny to make sure they can drive
Yeah,
whatever vehicle they're in.
yeah. We call it civilization. You know,
There you go.
you know, that's all.
There you go.
Part of it. It's like schools. It's like school taxes. I mean, everybody hates to pay them, but I don't have any kids at school. Damn it, why am I paying taxes? Because it's civilization. That's why.
No, I know.
You know.
Well, I have a lot of people out here. I guess they advocate anarchy, but I got to, as I've always said, the people who are the most strident advocates of anarchy will be the least capable of surviving it.
Right.
So they like to play at anarchy, but when it's really there, they're gone.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into these stories. Yeah, we better. Damn. Well, these aren't too long. I mean, they almost read themselves.
There you go. There you go.
Dudley, CEO British Petroleum. Yeah, he's got his life back. And I got to tell you, I'm a little peeved about this movie because it's kind of like a apologetic, we'll say.
Yeah.
All right, when it could have been a little something different. And this is out of Raw Story by. Oh, okay. It's by Raw Story, but from Agence France Presse. BP Chief Executive Bob Dudley said today, Tuesday, the company was a little bit saddened by the Hollywood film released this year over the 2010 disaster on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig, arguing the company had done everything to win back trust. Yeah. The explosion in 2010 on BP's Deepwater Horizon oil rig killed 11 men. Well, yeah, that's one way of putting it. Killed. They didn't just kind of like die in their sleep, let's put it that way.
Right.
Okay. Killed 11 men off the coast of Louisiana in the Gulf of Mexico, causing 134 million gallons of oil to spew into the sea in a major environmental disaster. Speaking at the World Energy Congress in Istanbul, Bob Dudley confirmed that is the World Energy Council where they go and is it kind of like Davos?
I guess.
A little resort. They kind of do a little bit of wheeling and dealing. It doesn't sound to me like they're talking about how to save the earth.
No, not at all. No.
At least Davos puts on the airs and they're trying to save the earth.
Yeah. At least you got that going.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. Okay. Confirmed that the company had spent over $61 billion to restore trust. $61 billion, you mean tiny little payouts to people to shut them up, make them sign non-binding arbitration agreements, non-disclosure things, right? Agreements.
Exactly.
Adds up. Restore trust instead of restore the ecology. I love that. And restore trust and paying off liabilities after the accident. We have been focused on earning back trust, he said. You know when a mobster says earning back trust? It's a little bit more. It's not as benign as it sounds.
Right.
I think limbs are involved here. Bob Dudley praised the management team he put together from 2010 after taking over from Tony I Want My Life Back Hayward in the wake of the Deepwater tragedy to deal with the aftermath of the crisis. The accident shook the company to the core because, these things happened before. It happened in Texas. And I think 6 guys were killed there, but no one heard about that one. We got caught. How could we have let that happen?
Exactly.
Getting caught. The film Deepwater Horizon, starring Mark Wahlberg and Kate Hudson, and released in the U.S. in September, shows how two workers on the oil rig help rescue co-workers as families deal with the impact of the disaster back home. They, the management staff, have seen the movie, and they are a little bit saddened by it, Dudley said, adding that the film took sides by painting a picture of heroes and villains. That is not how it is in real life. I mean, you have to understand, we're not villains just because we have a value amount on our workers and their lives are held in the balance. Sometimes it's cheaper to keep them alive, sometimes it's not. Hey, it's not personal, it's business.
Right.
We have had, okay, that's in this reporter's opinion, I'm sorry, you know that. Okay, back to the article. We have had to restore trust day by day by delivering safe, reliable operations and focusing more widely, said Dudley, noting that BP had to sell off a third of the company to meet its obligation after Deepwater. But he also acknowledged there was a long-standing issue of trust in the oil and gas industry, and our industry has a real image problem in some countries. Dudley said the energy industry should be, quote, proud of the service we deliver to the world, end quote, as it manages a great transition to keep meeting demand while fulfilling climate change commitments. Okay. I get to keep polluting because I can buy offsets. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm just saying that, they're still having problems there.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Here it is, 2016. This happened in 2010. And I'm not talking like tar balls, which they still have. But I'm talking about fractured seams that are still oozing stuff more than they ever had before. Okay, that's fine. It's the Pottery Barn rule.
Yeah.
You know that. Okay. I don't know. National Geographic's going to have a really big special about going to Mars. Obama says he wants to send people to Mars by 2030. And this is knowing that they can't come back. So I think he's got a list.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I would.
They're not coming back anytime soon, anyway.
I mean, we could send people to Mars and not have them come back. Okay, let's see. Who was that guy? Who was that guy that got up in the well when I was giving the State of the Union and said, "You lie"?
Yeah,
He's
on
let's
the
get
list.
That guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you need some industrialists to go. I mean, every science fiction movie always has them building the rocket. I'm not talking Elon Musk.
Right.
A couple of brothers from Kansas might be on the list too. Okay. A black-owned and operated Portland, Oregon cupcake shop is accused of racism. Now let me explain to you. Portland is one of the whitest cities in America. Okay, everybody thinks, oh, they're all liberal. They're still one of the most white cities in America. Keep that in mind. Okay. And this is by Lizzie Archer out of the Oregonian. Fat Cupcake opened its doors in southeast Portland about a month ago. The new location, the company's second, serves pastries and a wide variety of cupcakes out of a small storefront on 72nd Avenue. They're not downtown. Let me just put it that way. Okay?
Right.
Let's just put it that way. It's way out there. In early September, however, not long after the opening, the shop ran into some trouble when Portland customers became upset by the Mr. President cupcake, described on the menu as Oreo cookie baked inside white cake. An Oreo cookie baked inside white cake, cookies and cream buttercream. Well, it sounds pretty fattening.
Yeah.
This Oreo still uses lard. Just to let you know. But now we're talking about people who go online to look at menus. Okay, let's keep that in mind too. On Yelp, one reviewer wrote, very troubling. They were serving a cupcake called the Mr. President that had an Oreo cookie inside. When I tried to point out the racism implied, they claimed that our current president loves Oreos, which he does. When we called to ask Angelica Hayes, the owner of Fat Cupcake, about the accusations of racism, she responded, "I have been asked this so many times." She said over the phone yesterday unequivocally that she is not racist. For one thing, I myself am black. Hayes said she was born and raised a Portlander. She said she is very involved in the community and has even started something she called our Piece of Cake movement. We have driven around Portland to give away cakes to the homeless and donated thousands of cupcakes to the community. Hayes told us that the name for the cupcake came because she wanted to call it something to honor what a great cupcake it is. What sounds like it would be really fancy, she said. We thought of the presidential office. I just thought it was an honorary name. I thought I'd be honored if someone named a cupcake after me. She said that at one point someone told her that President Barack Obama's favorite cookie was the Oreo. So we thought, that's such a cool coincidence. But since opening in Southeast Portland, Hayes said she has had to field questions about whether her cupcakes are racist. She also has a cupcake called the Intern that the same customer complained was a slam on Monica Lewinsky. Hayes said it's not. At least until the election is over, Hayes said, they have changed the name of the cupcake to a more generic title, The Professional.
Yeah.
She said, of the cupcake, though, whatever it's called is still the most popular. All right, sometimes we put too much into it, right? All right. What did Martin Luther King say about white liberals when he was writing that letter in the Birmingham jail? What? What did he say? That's right. You have to look it up. All right, Wink. Creepy clown sightings.
Awesome.
All over the place. They're moving overseas. I'm telling you. I call it a franchise sort of in jest.
Yeah.
But I think we got to jump on this bandwagon and
right
restart. Selling people clown costumes.
Exactly.
You know, it's not the clowns themselves that make the money. Everybody knows that. Sort of like gold mining in California. It was Levi Strauss who made the money selling the pants.
Right.
The pans. Right. The shovels.
Yep. All that good stuff.
Sold it all.
Yeah. He didn't have to actually go out there and do the gold digging himself.
If we got like, the corner of the market on pancake makeup and red rubber noses, fright wigs.
Yeah, we're in.
I mean, that's what you need. You don't even need training after. You don't need to train your workforce.
No.
Dress them up in that, and they're fulfilling the creepy clown motif already.
Yeah.
All they have to do is stand there.
I'll have to be out standing on a corner somewhere.
And they'll call and then they'll call out SWAT.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And this is by Clark Mindock from the International Business Times. A pattern of people dressed as clowns scaring communities across the United States has spilled over into Europe. Clowns were sighted in England Sunday, adding to a growing list of clown sightings internationally, including reports in Canada and in Australia. That's right. The sightings were first reported August 1st in Wisconsin when a clown was seen walking with black balloons. The trend really caught on in late August when national news outlets, including the International Business Times, picked up on local media reports from Greensville County, South Carolina, where children at an apartment complex said clowns were trying to lure them into the woods because they were caught ditching school.
Awesome.
They don't ever mention that part of the story.
Right.
Why were you ditching school? We were scared of the clowns. And they're over watching, a cooking show.
Yeah.
All day because they didn't realize how boring it would be to stay home and ditch school when mom and dad were off to work.
Right.
A group of children at an apartment complex said they saw some scary clowns trying to lure them into the woods, and now we have mob hysteria. That's how it works. And people think, could fascism ever come to America? Oh, yeah. Scared of clowns? All right. Well, of course, it's moving overseas. There's a timeline of these clown sightings. And I did mention that, yes, indeed, there is a malevolent mime, sort of, like the boogeyman, right? Been scaring children since, I don't know, I said French school children since before the storming of the Bastille. But I think the boogeyman's been around since before even Kaiser Soze.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Let's get to our Jim Hightower break. And while we're on that break, we're going to connect our phone call with Chris and then come back, go over the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar. And then we got some stories for the last half with Chris. They're not all jocular either, by the way. All right. You're listening to the After Show with Wink and Justice on Netroots Radio, and we will be right back.
Fighting for us commoners. I'm not telling anyone how to vote, and I certainly understand the inclination to grab the biggest stick you can find to whack the bejesus out of those political and corporate elites holding you and your family down. And Trump has sold himself as the biggest, baddest stick around. But I am here to say, don't be a sucker. There's not a single populist muscle in Donnie's whole plutocratic body. He'll sell out wage earners, small business people, and anyone else to serve his own needs or whims, as his lifelong record, as opposed to his recent rhetoric, reveals. Donnie learned to be self-serving from his father, Fred, who became a millionaire by getting federal housing subsidies to build apartment buildings in New York City. Then, as landlord, he flagrantly discriminated against black people trying to rent an apartment. One of Fred's tenants was none other than Woody Guthrie, who was so appalled by Daddy Trump's greed and racism that he wrote songs denouncing him. The Donald not only inherited Fred's fortune, but also his business ethics, including engaging in wage theft, outsourcing his expensive Trump-branded products to such low-wage countries as China and Vietnam, and illegally using and underpaying undocumented immigrants to build his luxury projects. Also, he's been sued hundreds of times for stiffing cabinet makers, plumbers, and other small business suppliers. This is Jim Hightower saying, Donald J. Trump is a swaggering son of privilege who has never been on the side of working people and most certainly would not be a populist president. To the contrary, in his heart, mind, and his whole being, he's nothing but a Trumpist of, by, and for himself.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Powered by Unity Networks. You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back. And thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York, 21 on the East Coast. And Chris Reeves right now is indisposed. He's doing some important work, and we'll contact him in just a moment or so. And our crew, of course, as I mentioned before, are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud, whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the after show, to span the globe, the universe, and beyond.
Heck yeah.
That's right. Okay. Malevolent Minds. That's another franchise I want to.
Yeah. What's up with that?
I want to get that.
Yeah.
Just in time for the holidays.
Heck yeah.
This Connect Unite Hack Daily Co's community calendar is facilitated by True Blue Majority, and looks like there's a collection of songs to insult Donald Trump, and apparently, because of the newfangled technologies we have now, you can take old songs, almost sort of like a key thing, and you can strip out, the vocals.
Yep.
And layer your own, and people have done that. And apparently there's a lot of them. Wow, they even some L7. Hardly anybody remembers, except we do.
Oh, you got to be of a certain age, I guess, something like that.
So, I guess it's considered classic rock now, isn't that what?
Yeah, pretty much, I guess.
Oh God, help me, please.
Yeah, for real, yeah.
Okay, well, go check out those songs. They'll give you laughs galore. All right, so on Monday, October 24th, boy, that's coming up, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. in Asheville, North Carolina. The Asheville Daily Cossacks will be meeting up at the White Duck Taco, located at 12 Biltmore Avenue in Asheville, North Carolina. And is it for fun? Yes. For family? Yes. And more importantly, to prepare for early voting in support of Reverend Barber's efforts, to get out the vote.
Exactly.
So you could go to the Connect Unite Act Daily Co's community calendar and click the appropriate links and show up in North Carolina. I don't think there's going to be any hurricanes threatening the area then, but you never know.
Yeah, hope not.
Okay, let's hope not. And mark your calendar for this, because the San Francisco Cossacks will be having a holiday party Saturday, November 19th at 1 p.m. in the wine country in the town of Windsor. You know that part of California is very pretty. It's lovely.
Perfect.
All right. Well, that is your Connect Unite Act Daily Coast community calendar for the 11th of October of 2016. And as Providence would have it, we are now connected with Chris Reeves. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Sorry for calling you a few times. I should have thought that you were doing business. The good work.
You're fine. Yeah, it's just one where I ended up doing a lot of running this morning. In fact, I'm still doing some running. So
okay, just as long as if you're driving, it's hands free. That's all we care about. So all right. Well, let's get right into this. I'm gleaming these stories. Obviously, at least the more important ones, the less jocular one, we'll deal with in a bit. But let's start off with what I mistakenly called payday lender, but it's really a predatory lending scandal that has ensnared a Republican in a particular district. Why don't we just start off with that?
Okay, so Kevin Yoder, who's the Kansas representative for Congressional District 3, got ensnared when 3 of his largest donors were found guilty of predatory lending practices. Well, there's a civil element to this under the CFPB who handled it. Now, in the end, the CFPB decided to issue out fines. Now, these fines weren't small. In fact, the fines were, let me take a look, $1.2 billion. So basically, the people who donated pretty heavily to Kevin Yoder got banged for the fact that they were running a shady business. Well, This came up about a year and a half ago, originally when they faced federal court judges about their practices, and they got nowhere there. And Kevin Yoder got ensnared in a situation where he took money from them right before he took a vote on the CFPB, which was to change it from being a directorship to a 5-person panel, which would allow Republicans to stack the board and, let's just say, make it a little bit less consumer friendly. More friendly to his payday loan advocates. Well, here's the thing about that. The moment he decided...
Do we have him?
Yeah, we still do. Oh, maybe.
Okay.
Skype, you don't know, really.
You still there?
Yep.
Yeah, you just dropped a moment there, so.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. The moment that he took their money and then immediately went and voted, it looked a whole lot to people like, hey, this is a tit for tat, something's going on. And so he had an ethics complaint lodged against him. Well, this is all back in the news again because those same payday loan vendors just had the decision against them for over $1 billion, showing that maybe back a year plus ago when he tried to change the CFPB, they knew they were in trouble and they knew the direction this was going, because obviously this was an effort to stave off, them getting hit with a huge fine.
So the payday lender or the predatory lender, payday lender industry itself, particular companies now my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a vague memory of, and of course the Kochs are going to be the boogeyman here because I think Peterson's involved as much, but I heard that they were trying to keep payday lenders in force. Am I correct on that? I know the big banks have been in the background with the payday lender industry, but I vaguely remember the Koch brothers having something to do with payday lending in Kansas. Am I correct?
Well, there are some that supposedly they're invested in, but the reality is that payday lending is a great business for people on the investment side because you can hide a lot of your investment money. It makes it really easy to just say, well, we're lending out money, payday, with very little startup and operational capital. You can get a payday lending company off the ground. And so there are a lot of people who moonlight in it or people who buy into investment shares in it. I'll be honest, I've had more than one payday loan lending company come to me and ask me if I would be interested in investing. And the argument that they make is basically this: put in 10 grand and in a year you'll have 30. And for a lot of people that seems to be attractive until you realize you're doing it to take advantage of people.
Right. And so I guess there's no big move afoot to have a post office bank.
Right.
Because there's too much money. Well, a post office bank wouldn't really profit a particular entity, but it would profit all of us. Yeah, that's the thing. So,
right.
So go ahead.
Well, yeah, it would benefit all of us, but also it's about saving, spending a little money now to save money later. People who get themselves into payday loan problems end up either winding through the court system or they end up, losing assets. Well, who's that bad for? That's bad for the economy. Sometimes spending a little bit now or taking a little bit less now is a better deal than turning around and waiting it out and spending a lot later. Now, all this is kind of boiled to a front, by the way, this morning, in that DCCC released new polling data in the race for that U.S. House seat this morning, and they pointed out that Kevin Yoder, the incumbent, is now within 3.5 points. So the Democratic challenger in that race is making a real dogfight of it, and that polling data was done before the Trump sexually harass or, sexually assault audio and video. And so there may be a real bottom falling out for a lot of the Republicans who line themselves up with, Trump.
That's an interesting prospect. I was wondering about that. We keep hearing about the Trump effect. I liken it more to the infrastructure of the Trump campaign, where there's not really much work to help down ballot nominees, and whereas we're structured the exact opposite in some ways. Though there's plenty I wish that the DCC would throw some money at, or the DNC would throw some money at, but that's another argument for another day. So let's talk about some strong ballot or down ballot candidates who just happen to be strong women that could be a counterbalance to all of this vitriol.
Absolutely. We got really focused on how bad Trump is, and that dominates the discussion. And one of the things that I wanted to address is there are a lot of great women candidates who are running nationwide who are showing us really what powerful Democratic women are. And we forget about that sometimes. We forget that there are a lot of these small candidates running in races. And I try to choose 2 candidates who I personally interacted with, to be blunt, but also candidates who are running in races where they aren't expected to win. Nobody's looking at these races and saying, boy, Tamara is sure likely to win Georgia Senate District 40, or to say, Angelina is going to win Kansas House 39. These are difficult seats for a Democrat to run in. But you know what? Both of these candidates got out there and they have worked their tails off, not just because they wanted to win, but because they want to change their community. And if you look at their campaign, what really stands out to me is that they understood the odds and they changed their campaign to make it more a matter of, I've only got this much time to talk about issues, so I'm actually going to talk about issues and change my community. And Tamara Shealy in Georgia has really brought to the forefront a lot of discussions about why black voters aren't more involved in Georgia, how can we get them more involved, issues of race relations, the concerns of black entrepreneurship. These are issues that she's talking about that her senator most certainly will not. And when I see people who say, well, what does it matter? She's not going to win. I remind them that, a few years ago, when he ran unopposed, he got 51,000 votes. And when she ran against him the first time in 2014, his vote total fell to 30,000, and she picked up 18,000 votes. Now, that's a huge difference. Now, that's still a big loss for her, but you know what? That shows that first time he ran, everybody said, well, okay, we'll just vote for the Republican, and they all did. But when she ran a second time, she convinced 18,000 people who voted for the Republican the first time to vote for her. She gave them a message and said, you know what, there is something better. Maybe we should think about it. And convincing 18,000 people who voted Republican 2 years before to vote for a Democrat is not a small feat, and she deserves some praise for it. And in the case of Angelina Lawson, this is a candidate in another race that's probably unlikely for a Democrat to win. But what she has done is she just went out and focused her campaign about how can she improve her local community. And because of that, she's focused her campaign efforts on book drives, assistance for the battered women, needy children, those kind of things. And she's done it with the partners who have endorsed her in her campaign. So, for example, she knew she got the endorsement from a lot of women's groups. Well, what did she do? Well, she went out and she worked with battered women and women who were subject to domestic violence. She knew that she got the endorsement of educators, so where did she go? She went to help fundraise for early reading programs. Her next, I can tell you her next campaign event, at least what she emailed me, is that she's going to hold a day of cleaning where she and her volunteers are going to go clean the highways in her district, break out sticks and poles, because she got the endorsement of Sierra Club. Now, she knows that, like I said, her odds of winning are long, but instead of, saying, hey, this is what I am, she's saying, you know what, I'm a pretty powerful Democratic woman, and I'm not just going to talk the talk. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to walk the walk. And when people say, hey, what have you done for the environment? I'm going to say, I went up and I cleaned out my community. When they say, what have you done on women's issues? She's going to say, I raised money for battered women. And this is what she's done with her campaign. And I tell you, people always come to me and they say, oh, aren't you really proud of the people that you work with that win? And don't you feel bad about losses? In fact, I hear from a lot of people, why do you do any work or take any phone calls from candidates who probably can't win? And I'll tell you, as proud as I am of candidates that we've worked with that have won and candidates who I know this year will win, some because they have no opposition, I'm just as proud or even more proud of candidates like those two who have stood up and done the right thing for their community, and they deserve, communities like Daily Kos and progressives around the country to recognize, you know what, this is what the party's about. These grassroots candidates doing the right thing to represent the Democratic image. And we should all feel proud about that. We should all look at that and say, damn, this is the kind of party that I want to have. And with so much negative news about the way the Republicans are treating women, I thought, I don't want to spend too much time on, women being victimized. I want to have at least one story that is, here's some powerful women that deserve, they aren't victims. These people are, they're the boss. They are, to me, the best example of everything I love about politics.
Maybe this is I apologize for having a sports analogy here, and this may be a poor sports analogy, but there was a belief before Dr. Richard Bannister broke the 4-minute mile that the human body just could not do that. I mean, now runners are running the mile in like the mid 340s. I mean, it's amazing, right? But people all look to Richard Bannister as being that point where people believed, okay, we can do this, and they set up their training for it. But everybody forgets how much work Bannister put in to break that 4-minute mile and how many races he lost trying to get there. So this is a kind of mindset that we need to embrace, is that it's really not about the winning. It's about reminding people that there's a chance. And if we work hard enough, we might be able to break that 4-minute mile. That's why run in a red district? You're just going to lose. Well, if I keep it up, if I don't win it, somebody else might. Somebody after me.
Or you know what? If you don't win it, there are times where even in a loss in some of these races, it forces the person who wins to be held accountable. They know for a fact that there's resistance in their district, and there are people who expect different things. That's something that's really important, is to put it out there that, hey, you're responsible for your whole district. I say this too of Democrats who run in districts and they win their district 80-20, and I say to them, you know what, it's easy to dismiss, the Republicans in your district, but it tells you there are some people there who, maybe you're not going to follow what they want, but they're still your constituents. You still represent them. There's nothing wrong with going and talking to them or having them in a forum and saying, okay, what do you think? Now, you can dismiss them, and I don't, and they are going to, they can get up and say something crazy, and you can say, yeah, okay. But it still means that, they have a voice that you as an elected official can say, okay. But if a candidate like Angelina or like Tamara comes out and they get 40% of their vote or more, let's say that, then it gives a pretty good sign of, hey, this district isn't, can't be run in a way that is your way or nothing. You've got to come back here and talk to us about all the issues.
Well, I think we used to call that retail politics. I mean, what happened to that?
Exactly.
Now, I hate getting back to the more salacious elements of this campaign and election season, but you brought up another good point in another diary, and I got to tell you, I've been around for a while, and to me, this is not really anything new in terms of politics. And you kind of hit the nail on the head that when you heard men talk like Trump, those are the kind of guys that got elected to the Missouri and Kansas State House. And I got to tell you, I've experienced a similar sort of misogyny and bravado that's, endemic to a certain political spectrum, shall we say. And
well, I wrote a tweet when this came out, and I said, I have never heard anybody talk like this. And I
right.
mean, and in my mind, when I wrote it, I thought, I was like, I've heard guys say things like, oh, that girl is hot, et cetera, et cetera. But I have never heard anybody say, oh, and let me tell you about the time I sexually assaulted somebody.
Yeah.
And I wrote that, and I sent it, and I thought, yeah, that's how I feel. And I had somebody send me an email who said, that's not true. And they said, and they reminded me of an incident in the Missouri State House where I absolutely had heard somebody talk about basically feeling up a woman against her wishes. And it was in a bantery way, and it was not put that way, but that was clearly the context that we were getting across. She reminded me of it because she said, one of the bad things about this is, she said, most men are not like this. Good men are not like this. But there are bastards, basically, in the world who do behave this way. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? She is right. There is an element that is like this. And the thing about Trump doing this, and the real danger part, is that Trump has come out and said, well, guys talk like this, guys talk like this. Well, guys don't talk like this, but bad guys talk like this.
Right.
And it's important to realize that there are really too many of the bad guys. There are too many people who are not good people who do these kind of things. And I don't want to excuse them by saying, oh, Trump's out on an island all on his own. I needed to say, you know what, I've thought about it. She was right. I need to remember there are a lot of women who've been through exactly this kind of situation because some guy said or did something exactly like what Trump is saying. And I need to point out that, hey, this isn't okay. Trump saying more people do it, that doesn't make it okay at all. All it does is say that, it gives us a chance to hold the mirror up and say, this is how bad it can get. And you know what? We all need to be more vigilant and opposed because otherwise, we're giving a lot of people a free pass and they shouldn't have a free pass. So.
Yeah, I agree. There's no free passes. Exactly right. Exactly right. Oh, we lost Justice. Hang on, we'll get him back. We'll get him back. Go ahead.
One of the things that we're seeing right now that's happening in a lot of these Senate and House races is we're seeing Republicans run Appalachia. They're coming out and, falling all over themselves for, oh, Trump is bad. This was bad. This was bad. I still endorse him. I still back him. Or they'll say, Trump is bad, but I know daughters or mothers or I have a wife or which you want to say, of course, biologically you have a mother. You know a woman. I mean, let's get real. But the problem that I'm really running into with a lot of this stuff is when they say, I know a woman or I have a mother, these kind of things, is I think, the people who are getting the bad message isn't women. They already know this. The people who need to hear that we're opposed to this are young boys who are hearing a major political leader say horrible things. And so, saying, oh, I know a woman. Women don't need to be informed that there's sexism and misogyny in the world. They got that memo a long time ago.
Yeah, probably when they're 9 or 10 years old.
That's right. It's young boys and young men who are getting the message of, oh, this is what rich and powerful guys are able to do. They can do this kind of thing. And it kind of, the Republicans right now are taking a shellacking in the polls. And I think a big part of it is because there are a lot of women who look at this and they say, we got the memo. We know. Stop pandering to us like, we're the problem or that women somehow need to be pandered to on this issue or informed that bad things have happened to us. They got it. The people who need the harsh message aren't them. And Republicans who keep wanting to hammer it that way, they're expressing a worldview that's just wrong. And so when I wrote that, I basically said, we can't buy into this idea that Trump is the only one that does this.
Right.
Bad people do this. And we got to get on board with saying we're basically against bad people. I don't care how many people do it, how many people say these horrible things. It doesn't ever make it right.
Right.
So what's wrong with saying, Trump says lots of people do it? Well, great. Lots of people are wrong.
Yeah, they are. They are. Because it isn't stuff that you hear in the locker room on a day-to-day basis either. You don't hear that stuff, really. I mean, like I said, there might be one or two that are, discussing that, but the overall locker room of maybe 50 guys, 40, 50 guys, they're not talking about that. They're just talking about the everyday crap that goes on.
No, like I said, good guys don't say those things. Terrible guys say those things.
Exactly right. Yep.
I mean, and
exactly
and that's what we've got to acknowledge, and then just say, but Trump isn't the only terrible person. Jeff Sessions yesterday from Alabama, who came out and said, "Bah, this wasn't sexual assault. This was just guys all talking about being guys."
Yeah,
and I thought,
you're
a terrible person. Then.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sorry, but it doesn't. I don't care that you can come out and say, "Well, I have a mother and a daughter." Oh, of course, fine, great. Unless you were, born out of a test tube, that's true for everybody.
Right.
But you got to come up and stand up for women.
Exactly
and he's
right.
not, if they're not willing. And standing up for women isn't explaining to them that you know a woman. It's going to other men and saying, this is wrong.
Yep. Chris, we got to get out of here. Much appreciate the conversation today, and we'll look forward to having you back next week, but it is time for us to go. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Okay, we got content the rest of the day. We got to get out of here. I'd do Justice's bit, I guess. Who loves you, baby? But we're out.